going on my Bow Wow Bill page? It is. Okay, good. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live stream. We have George joining us. George Kittridge.
Yes, I go by George the dog trainer.
George the dog trainer.
Yes.
The man. George the man.
Yes.
The stud muffin.
I go by many names.
Is that essential water there?
It's actually a reused essential bottle, but yeah, I like my ionized hydration.
Yeah, and the pH too is 9.5 is up there in the Essentia.
Yeah, or higher, which I really appreciate.
I have my Zip Fizz. Zip Fizz is like a B12. I already had one today too, dude. That's my second one today. I don't mess around, dude. Oh, wait, let me make sure that this thing is streaming. We got some people watching us. I need to shave this. I need to share this. And if you're watching now, share it. And can you see the Bow Wow Bill page on your phone there, George?
I'm on my laptop, but what am I looking for?
Bow Wow Bill page, my page that is on. We're live right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to share it to your audience, you can share it right now as well. And I'm going to the page. If you can hear my dog is coughing in the background. She's got a little cough, and it's not good. Oh, big girl. So here she is over here. Oh, my poor thing. Not feeling too well, and she's quarantined from all the other dogs, but got a little cough going around. So I'm going to share this. You can share it right now. There you go. I hear myself.
Yeah, we are like living in the fifth dimension here. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Live with you while I'm live with you.
That's
live.
And then you just messaged me too. Here. Oh, you shared it with me. You don't need to share it with me. You just share it out to your
I am the future.
You are the future. We're going to cause a rift in the space-time continuum, man, if we mess around too much. So we need to stick with what we know. And while I'm doing this and not getting distracted, when you're done doing it, are you done sharing?
Yeah, I called you a dog wizard and was done with it.
Dog wizard. I don't know. There's already dog wizards out there, but I'll take it. Yeah. I have a little magic wand. When I'm doing a dog wizard, I'll just wave it over the dog. I'll be like, okay, cool. That'll be $3,000. No. So while I'm doing this, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself? George, the dog trainer.
Yeah.
George,
I'm George, and I train dogs in Southern California, Orange County, like by Disneyland area for people who don't know where that is. I started at Petco as a cashier when I was like 19, and I got bored, and I really liked the animal aspect of Petco, and so I decided to venture outwards, and fish and reptiles and birds didn't really resonate with me, but dog training did, and so I got a pretty solid education there and a very, very strong foundation and purely positive reinforcement-based training, and it was very good. I fell in love with the service of other people in my community and getting to be a good guy. That was cool, because like as a cashier, I was not the good guy, like no one wrote me Christmas cards. And so I realized that I had a limited capacity to help my dog training students and their dogs as a dog trainer at Petco, because I didn't have the whole picture. I had a piece of the puzzle, but there were a lot of dogs I couldn't help. And so I started venturing outwards and learning other methods and approaches just through like books and podcasts and all sorts of like videos. Everything I could find, I consumed for a period of time, and then tried on my personal dogs and then the dogs that were coming to my dog training classes at Petco, as much was allowed by Petco. So I actually got to a point at Petco at like 20 years old where I had like 3 or 4 classes a week of just dog reactive dogs that couldn't go anywhere else. But we did a group class with them in the alley between the Petco and the store next door. And so we had like a nice, 80-foot by 40-foot area. And I just made them start walking in circles. And like I was doing it on like real gentle tools. And I look back at that now and I'm like, wow, like I was so limited in my knowledge and my skills, and I was able to achieve that because of good infrastructure. But as I left Petco, I've become more skills and like personal development and like actual ability to handle harder dogs oriented, and my infrastructure has declined. So I don't do nearly as many of those classes, but I learned so much from it because I was just flooded with so many dogs that needed this. So as I was doing that, I realized I can't help all of these dogs at Petco. I started my own business and started, training dogs at people's houses for like $25 a session. They'd be like, "We have a good dog, but like, can you, we're not having problems at the store. Can you come to our place?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I got a business license and just kind of scaled it up from there and really built it. And now I have a thriving business and I have a brand, and it's kind of crazy, but I think it all comes down to like I'm doing something that I love and that like I am grateful for. And so I think that comes out in my work, and my students feel it. And like definitely the approach that I have with dogs, like I feel good about, like I sleep.
Well, and I think that you're an authentic human being that has had experiences that you can draw back on that give you value based on direct experience, knowledge through direct experience that other people might not have. And, and just a different aspect of what life can be like. And I mean, I remember we spoke earlier and you were talking about I was a feral human.
Yes.
You want to tap into that? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I was born homeless and in not the nicest parts of the world. So the Hawaiian Islands have a special kind of poverty, and I was on Kauai. So like it's kind of a nice poverty because it's not like a city poverty where you're just oppressed by the world around you. It was a very free poverty, almost like Tarzan. And so it was cool because I got to be like a little street dog, just wandering around, picking up food and like doing my best to not die. And that was obviously majorly impactful. And there were a lot of social and cultural norms that I did not understand as I developed as a child and then adolescent. And now even as an adult, I say like, I am the best kind of stupid where it's like, I ride around on a motorcycle with a dog helmet because it's a good way to promote my business. And it's like, I recognize in hindsight that it's a little absurd, but I don't mind the social pressure of absurdity, so I can leverage that to benefit my business,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you in doing so, you get people's attention.
Yes. So there's a lot of like marketing benefits of it as well, but it all comes from a place of like authenticity is huge to me, right?
Yeah.
If I'm pretending to be like this groomed and cultured and like uppity guy, I'm gonna at some point I'll slip up, right? I'll be like, oops, I let out what I really am. And then people are gonna be like, oh, that's incongruent with what you claim to be. And so I inherently distrust you because of that.
Yeah.
And like that is my one pet peeve is you can be whatever you want, right? Like I don't have any right to tell you what to believe or not, even to extremes of like being a racist, right? You can be racist, that's fine. But like don't tell me you're not racist if you are racist, because then I'm going to treat you in a different way. And like I just need to know what you are. So it's like if you're racist, cool, I distance myself from you. Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. Now you go live your life over there and I'll be over here.
Yes.
But it's so unfortunate to like have the I just don't get my authenticity. I'd rather that, I think that's a better approach.
Well, it's good to know. It's good to know what people's true motives are, and if they have ulterior motives. And a lot of times we see that, especially in the industry of working with animals, that people have an ulterior motive of maybe making money as a professional instead of putting the dog's welfare and as a primary motivation of why you're doing this. I mean, there's just so many other things that kind of get a little bit wishy-washy when you don't know what you're dealing with, right? And yes. who people are. But it's also not just knowing, but acting on that as well. And when people show you their cards, so to speak, it's up to you to decide if you're going to continue that relationship or continue to allow that which doesn't serve you to exist in your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's something that is so terrible or offensive that you have to stand up to it, great, like awesome. Now you know that you have to address that, right? But
Yes.
I think most things in life, there's this saying that I came across like a couple years ago, and I just love it. And it's not my monkeys, not my circus. You know?
Yeah, Adrian Copeland said that to me recently, and I was just like, man, I'm locking in on that. And I
Yeah.
remember hearing that too. But yeah, that's it. It's yeah, you got to let people go, man. And as somebody that works with behavior, I'm fascinated by people's behavior as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and narcissistic, borderline
Mhm.
personalities.
What I don't understand is like, how can we have so many hyper intelligent individuals in the dog training industry that can do super advanced habit formation schedules and like these advanced things with dogs, but they're a mess. Like they don't have a good sleep routine, or they don't have like good healthcare practices, but they're like, oh, the dog has to eat all raw, organic, like biologically appropriate food,
yeah,
and then they're not doing those things for themselves. Because I think one of the biggest blessings of dog training for me is the parallels between like personal development, growth, and like fitness, nutrition, health, lifestyle, and then actual dog like fitness, health, nutrition, lifestyle. Because we are both like so similar, which is why we get on so well and have the relationship, is because we are both social migratory predators. And so that means we're going to have very similar just basic needs and developmental state. I just don't get it. How can people have such a grasp of dogs and no grasp of self?
because dog folk tend to be sort of broken. That's what Linda Kane.
All right.
Yeah, no, I mean it's Gary Vaynerchuk. You know who Gary V is
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
and so he was up in front of an audience and he was like, you know what, I fucking hate dogs.
What?
And then that's my response too was like I kind of tuned in and I was like, what? And he's like, I know some of you are like, I hate this guy now. I know I lost some of you, but hear me out. He's like, I hate the fact that people give away their potential trying to fix these animals before they've done the work on themselves.
Yeah.
And
God,
I was like, dude, I love this guy.
yeah. Yeah. And
And I'm
like,
sure that trickles into the professional realm too. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
even more, right?
I'd say I've seen it more in the professional realm than in the private sector, but maybe I'm blessed to live in an area that's very like, woke or like wealthy. So they have different kind of struggles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also their awareness of that whole picture approach, too, the mind body aspect, and the body is a part of the experience that we have in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And the
I had
body.
I had a real deep meditative experience once that let me get the quote. It said, "I am my mind in my body in this world in my mind." And that's just going into like the whole, you have a brain, right? But like there's an observer factor there. There's someone that sees what's going on and has an interpretation. And that's the whole consciousness aspect. But yeah, like I don't know why I said that. It just felt right.
Well, I mean, it just ties into what we're talking about. But hey Elizabeth, Sydney Ann McManus says, and the fact that dog becomes emotional outlet for so many people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue comes from people that derive their value from the good they can do for others and for dogs, because then they're forced to constantly take on these hurt or broken things that always need fixing, and like rather than having value from within, they get it from that, and it's like that's just obviously not sustainable once you've seen another way, of course. But
Well, it becomes a management. I mean, once you start to understand, and the more cases that you see, and the patterns, because it's all about pattern recognition, man.
yeah,
I mean, even with the habit forming exercise that we're teaching these animals is pattern recognition, right? And repetition, just like with us, the repetition is the mother of all learning. And it's just as we move along, and I like the fact that George is still relatively new in the industry. He's a young man,
yeah,
but he's hungry and he's smart, and he is he's willing to deal with the social pressure of absurdity. I like how you put that, where you're able to be absurd and invite people to press and to ask questions, and in doing so, I think that holds you to a higher accountability and standard yourself.
Yeah, of course.
What does the back of your shirt say?
It's a branding move. Let's see. So, it says Georgia Dog Trainer. Ask me anything. I don't bite. And then it has my info.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I remember looking at that at the conference, and I was like, "Oh, George," because it's like it's inviting, and a lot of times, we put up walls when we're working with these dogs, and sometimes we're unapproachable. Yeah. And as a business owner or somebody that is people-minded, I think that's important as well, because we're not just walking up to people's dogs without the liaison of that dog's owner making the decision for the animal. And so it starts there.
You hear all the time these people that go like, "Oh man, I'd love to be a dog trainer. I don't like working with people." And I'm like, "Oh man, you're in for it."
I mean, that's all it is. And relating with people and finding I don't know, that common ground. Right?
On the note of the shirts, real quick, to any like professionals out there, dog trainers or people trying to build their business, the shirts cost like $250, and I wear them everywhere. And like, so I have made so much more than my investment back. But the nice thing about shirts is they're not terribly hard or anything like that. So you probably have a dog training client or person in your life that can do it. And like $250 is a group class. So I gave this guy a group class. He made me shirts. Those shirts have made me multiple thousands of dollars. And I only lost $300 on the group class.
Yeah.
So, connections, relationships.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Business, man. That's why it's like I can do right by people. Something I told a client that wanted a refund or something like that because their dog like was sick and then they just spaced it out for too much. I'm like, look, doing the right thing is always in the margins because I get to be the boss. And if it's not in the margins, then I'm in the wrong business. This is like a service business. Yes. And I'm serving people.
Serving people by taking care of their dog, something that they cherish and hold dear, because this dog is happy to see them. The dog is in love with them, and they're in love with that animal. And what a better honor to be able to be appointed to that task, in my opinion. Yeah. But you got to also find those customers that value what you do and what you know. And there's people out there that are going to take advantage of you too. Anybody that wants a refund, I'm like, yeah, here's your refund.
It's not even worth deliberating over.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but it's also, that it's also scary, and people get hungry in this business, and the world is hard. And George, Terry Olmsted says hello.
Oh, hey, Terry. She's a real good pet sitter in my area that I refer my 175-pound St. Bernard Mastiff mix to her company, and man, they're just best friends.
Awesome.
This little lady and just this massive dog, and it's good to know.
Yeah. Sometimes it's fun to see that relationship and just how people, I mean, there's an intuitive desire that drives us to work with these dogs, and those people that are actually brave enough to trade their life to work with these animals. It's not easy, but there are parts that are very rewarding, very, very rewarding. And I think it's 100% worth it, man.
Yeah, and it can be if you find that balance, man. Like, you can't lose yourself in it, though. You can't. I mean, maybe you do have to. Maybe there have to be people that are like the rescue groups and the adoption groups. I see some of them just burnt out, but they have no escape, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, maybe everything I do would fall apart if they didn't do what they do. But I really believe that there has to be a way where they can have a balance between serving these dogs and filling themselves. Because if they're empty and hollow and drained, like, they're going to be strung out and tired, and then things are going to go wrong. Like a dog that would otherwise be an easy management because you're strained becomes like a risk and lands a bite. And it's like, oh man, now it's because you didn't take care of yourself that this dog is suffering. So there is a point there where it's like you have to nourish yourself first. You can't pour from an empty glass. And it's like, I hate seeing all these people just like grinding and slaving away, because it's like, as much as I am a dog trainer, I am first and foremost an entrepreneur, right? And I have been so blessed and served by dogs that I want to give back and serve them to the very greatest capacity that I can. But I think we're at a very precarious and dangerous time in the world in a lot of ways, right? We talk about automation and how it's going to affect jobs and all that stuff, but people never really think about, like, where do dogs sit in this futuristic robotic world where we're having less and less space, right? And I'm in kind of the metropolis. I'm in LA, right? And I'm still 30 miles from LA, and I see the effects of like city life with dogs. And I think people are always going to have their dogs, but that it's going to change a lot. And that means we're going to have to adapt. And if we can anticipate and prepare for what comes, then I think we'll be in an even better shape. So I'm getting to a point where I see we have dogs, right? And I want to help dogs because I love dogs. And sometimes that means I can't help this specific dog right here, or I just can't stretch myself too thin, because then I won't be able to serve my greater purpose of benefiting dogs as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what people need to realize, is that you have to choose your battles here, you know, and not only that, but you do have to realize that self-care is important. Just like Brownie says, or Browen, sorry. What a unique name. She says one of the highest rates of suicide are found in vets and rescues, and that's absolutely correct. And NPR just did a study, and my friend Jackie did an interview. I'm going to post it up in the comments right now, and she's a veterinarian, and she talks about the pressures that veterinarians face. And she just did a podcast on it's actually a social worker that hosts these podcasts called Someday We'll All Be Dead. And this podcast is called Behind the Curtain, a frank discussion about veterinary suicide. And that's part 1 and part 2. And I hope to have Jackie, my Dr. Jackie, join me. She's actually my dog's doctors. And she's the doctor, the veterinarian that I've had here at my place to euthanize my beloved animals. And she's really close to me, and it was good to hear her voice. And I recommend everybody listening to that just to see, her putting it into her own words on how these people are like type A type of people. They're very smart, and they learn, and they go to this very long path of schooling, and their brain knows all this stuff and is very science oriented and diagnostics and wanting to come out and fix the world. And then they have to deal with people that are so emotionally attached and ungrateful a lot of times. And it's just hard to grasp what they do every day. And she talks about how I euthanize and I deal with euthanasia every day. And it's a hard job, man. And I'd recommend, if thanking your vet and just taking time to listen to what she has to say on this. And then Dr. Kristen Kohler, I just had her on one, and we're going to be having another. He calls me Bronson now, aka Charles Bronson. That's so funny. Sorry, I had Brownwin.
Good old Bronson.
You are just like Christopher Fraser. You can't say my name. He calls me Bronson, aka Charles Bronson. That's funny. I think of Action Bronson, my buddy, my good friend Action Bronson, whenever I hear that name. But yeah, and then rescues too, man. I mean, they're overwhelmed. They got dogs that they can't place. They place a dog, and then the dog in the relationship with the people isn't treated correctly. The dog reacts, and then the rescue gets blamed. And it's just it's an interesting dynamic. We're an interesting species as humans or Homo sapiens,
Yeah. And so we're at an intersection of a lot of points in like a lot of different industries developing. And so I think it's never been more complicated, right? I don't know if it's easier or harder, but it's certainly never been more like convoluted and like just like complex. Like it's this whole thing. And I feel like I have enough of a picture where I can kind of categorize it and be like, okay, there's a few main things going on here. But to your civilian population, and even like the people that are trying to take on the problems that I'm not even aware of, right? Like the veterinarian population and the rescue population, to them, it's like the part of the reason why there's gotta be so many suicides is because they can peek behind the curtain and be like, wow, I'm euthanizing 1,000 dogs a year and I'm just one vet. There's 80,000 vets in my state or something like that. And then the shelter people. So it's like, it's got to be this degree of despair and helplessness. And on the note of like mental health and suicide and all of that, man, like it's a demon and it's a burden. And I think there's always going to be the ability for people to seek out help. And like, I think it just has to be destigmatized. Like, I don't want to be that guy that goes like, oh, I was depressed. I've never been like suicidal or made an attempt or anything, but like, rough childhood. Like, I've had some struggles. And
Yeah.
so like it's manifested itself in these insecurities and all these things that are like, when you really get down to it, absurd, right? And it's through learning to be authentic and these things where it's like, I've overcome a lot of my struggles. A lot of it is, of course, nutritional and like environmental and lifestyle. But this is where I get lost because it's like it's the same thing I do with dogs, you know. So it's like if I see a depressed dog trainer, I'm like, hey, you know that thing you do with shy dogs, do that to you. And I just don't see it carry over as much. But I think yes, the dog training world does attract a lot of hurt or broken people.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's the key to your potential right there. Like whatever your trauma is, whatever your hurt is, that's the thing that if you leverage and like overcome is going to make you the strongest, most amazing, best version of yourself. So that way you can show up better for these things and people and dogs that you love.
Well, not only that, but you could recognize that which you struggled with in them as well.
Yeah. As weird as it is, like I'm a 24-year-old male, right? I have a lot of vulnerability with my students, right? Like I have amazing connections and relationships. I've cried with my
Dude,
students.
I could be your dad.
Hey, you might be. See
Yeah,
that?
we have connections, man.
This is an incredible joke now, right? Like I don't let it get to me. Roast the world, bro.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, but it's also,
Yeah.
I mean, the relationships that we have too. I mean, and being able to see the world through different eyes, hear it through different ears based on our experiences. And I think what you said about the key to your potential lies within that challenge. The strength is in there, right? And that's it. It's not, you're not going to get it through, or you're going to get it through. You're not going to go around. You're going to go up over. You're not going to go under. You're going to have to go through this. And just like the sword, when it gets forged in the flame,
Yeah. Now you're speaking my language.
now it comes out and it's stronger, right? It's annealed. It's 10 times, or I don't even know how much stronger, but I know it's much stronger. And so will you once you see whatever lessons and gain whatever truth needs to out of this experience.
Yeah.
And then be able to apply it not only to your life, so this experience gets better, and but be able to speak it using your voice, and be able to recognize that in others. And because you've addressed it in yourself, you can help others address it in them.
Yeah.
Too. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think almost like I sometimes can come off as very intense, right? Like my friends are like, George, why can't you ever just like settle? Like, why are you always pushing yourself so hard? Like, why are you always depriving yourself of these things? Like every month I do a monthly habit where I just try to be like, what can I go without? Last month, I just decided to quit chewing gum because I recognized that my jaw was hurting from overexertion because I would chew when I was stressed, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, George, you're so intense, right? And on that note, I feel like I almost have an obligation, like I believe everyone has an obligation to overcome their hurts, to become stronger, to be of service to others. And so like I'm doing it for me, and I recognize that like I get so much more out of it when I'm in it for others. And man, it's that just like it's so good to be able to be good to other people, and you can't be good to other people if you're not good to yourself.
Look at it this way, man. You could be better to other
Yeah.
people if you're good to yourself,
Yeah.
right? And that's it. It's like, yeah, be good to other people, but if you're good to yourself, you can be even better to other people. Yeah, and don't lose yourself trying to be better to other people. And Lisa Nichols, who's a motivational speaker, and she was on the movie The Secret, and she said something that I always remember about giving from your saucer. You know, you want your cup to be so overflowing that which you give, it doesn't. You give that which you discard anyway. It's something that you know, in self-care. And Brene Brown talks about in The Power of Vulnerability that you cannot love another person more than you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty big one to kind of dive into. And
Yeah.
and self-forgiveness. Like,
Yeah.
it's so easy to forgive another person, but try forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
And that's important too, right?
Yeah, and I think it's hard, and it goes back to that current complexity of the world that we live in, where there's just so much out there. I don't know if people don't know where to look, or if they're like afraid to be vulnerable, or whatever it is. But I don't think it's ever been a better time to be alive either. You know, like you can literally just Google "how do I stop being depressed," and you'll get 80 million hits.
Well, not only that, but we have apps now that bring a mental health professional PhD level to you right now, you know. Um, and I believe you're right, man. I think that the stigma of mental health needs to kind of go away, and we need to, especially as men and
Yeah,
as young men too, and older men here,
yeah,
that it's okay to talk about this and not really get down on ourselves or dive down the rabbit hole, or even wear it as a flag of like, oh yeah, I'm depressed. It's like, no, let's figure it out. Let's figure it out, and how, not just how it's okay to feel this way,
yeah,
and it's part of life. And sometimes we need to sit with it,
yeah.
and sometimes we need to be in the hole. But sometimes it's okay if somebody comes down, sits in the hole with you, and be like, I'm going to climb out the ladder. You want to come with me? You know, and show you, hey, look, there's a way out of this hole, right? And that's kind of what mental health does, is allows people to see a different form of how to get out of that hole. Does that make
So I
sense?
have a parable that I think that is super fitting here, and it's a parable of my own life. When I was 17, I got sent to a wilderness therapy program for troubled youth. So I spent 105 days in the Utah desert, 100 miles from the nearest town, no tent, no cabin. We had 60-pound packs, and we would backpack 5 to 15 miles a day. Imagine somewhere between the movie Holes and like military boot camp, right?
Okay.
Majority of kids that were sent there against their will for drugs, rehab, behavioral issues. There were actually a lot of like students from out of the country, like a Russian kid, some kids from Jamaica. It was oftentimes a choice between juvie and this kind of thing, right? Because of my childhood, when my brother started getting into heavier drugs, I was smoking weed and drinking and partying. My parents sent me here instead. And I was pissed, right? Like I was depressed. I was a moody, bratty little 17-year-old George. And every week we had therapy. And so like I was just bitching and moaning about how all these other kids were hood and like I shouldn't be here. I was just partying, blah, 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 blah. And one of my therapy assignments from my therapist after a while was like, okay, George, you know what? You're right. You don't have to do anything. You can just sit in your sleeping bag all day and bitch and moan. And I was like, yes. Because, like, you know, otherwise I'd be gathering wood or building shelter or hiking or whatever. So I got special permission to do this. And I did. So we generally wake up at like 6, 7 a.m., right? And we cook, we do all of our stuff. And like they're very rigid and like military level. And after like 4 hours, I was kind of bored. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, boo hoo, like this sucks. And like 6 hours, I was going crazy. I was like, man, like, I gotta get out. And like, so by the middle of the day, 4 p.m., all the other kids were like, why did blah, 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 blah. I was like, man, fuck this. And I got out of my sleeping bag and I just got my shit together and I did what I needed to do because there was no other way through it. The only way past it was through it. And so from that point forward, I had committed to like my growth. I overcame a lot of struggles out there. Actually became the fire master, the whole thing. Made some cool things. I'll tell you about that another time. But the point of the story is like sit with the suck. and recognize that it sucks, right?
Yeah.
And then move on and be like, okay, now what do I do to make it not suck? And like, this is something, again, we talk about in dogs. You can either move away from something unpleasant or move towards something pleasant. And of course, it works best when you have both, right?
Yes. Give it an option, you know?
Yeah, give it an option, right? So like, find your positive and your negative. I have a pretty simple training philosophy, right? If anyone wants to steal my method, here you go. Positive 1, 0, negative 1. Reward the behaviors you like. If you can, make behaviors you don't like ineffective. That should be 80% of your training. If you need to correct a dog for something that you've expressed to it dozens and dozens of times in a healthy, fair way, and the dog is literally just flipping you off, negative 1, something unpleasant. Generally, my tool of choice is a roll of paper towels.
Like a bonking kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like if the dog's jumping on you and you've tried so hard, I'll say no, and I'll boop it with a roll of paper towels. 3 or 4 boops, and man, the dog's like, why didn't you just say so?
And then you could boop your arm and know that you're not hurting that dog.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm abusing a dog with a roll of paper towels.
Yeah. But it's also, I mean, you know, watching that dog as you know, the expert, you know, and
Yes.
but also knowing that growth process that we find in ourselves is also going to be found in that animal too, and
Yeah, of course.
to know that they're going to sit with the suck a little bit too,
Yeah.
especially if they've been getting away with quite a bit for quite a while, and
Yeah.
you're like, dude, honeymoon's over.
Yeah. And like, I see hissy fits, I see temper tantrums, I see the whole bit, man. And I'm like, I anthropomorphize so much. And like, oh no, that's bad, right? I'm not training other dog trainers. I'm training civilians, right? Like if I need to express to them that it's okay to leave their dog in a crate because it's just like leaving a baby in its, what do they call baby crates?
Cribs.
Crib. Because, yeah.
Baby crates.
Crates for babies. Yeah, cribs. Because you leave the baby in the crib for its own safety and well-being, right? Not because you want to lock up the baby. It's because the baby will get into things.
Yep.
So it's okay to crate your puppy for the same exact reason.
Yeah.
I think. Sorry, now we're getting into philosophy, like dog training philosophy.
Oh, it's fine. We can talk about whatever. I know that you sent me some stuff that you wanted to chat about, so let me see what.
Yeah. Oh, here's a good one. I think for people is they focus so much on like the what and the how, and you know the whole start with why thing got some movement. But I think it really is like you have to have inspiration. You have to know what you do want. You have to know what your positive one is. What are your reinforcers? What makes you feel good? You know.
Yeah.
If you know what that is, then you can work towards it. And maybe for you, it's like, oh man, I can look back at my week and say that I saved 50 dogs' lives. Cool. Great. That's your positive one. Do that. Maybe for someone else, it's like I have provided a good free lifestyle for my family. Right. And it's like, oh, the vessel that I did that was through something beneficial to my community. I trained dogs and all that. Like, I don't love dogs more than I love my family. So this is why I've done it. But it's cool that I get to help dogs too. Other people, maybe their positive one is literally just status. Maybe they just want to feel cool or say they're a dog trainer or whatever it is. Right. So they look into their friends. Okay. If you are doing it in a healthy, fair way that's benefiting dogs, I'm fine with that. But you have to know your positive one. You have to know what you're working towards. Maybe you just don't want to work 9 to 5. Great. Go help some dogs.
Yeah, maybe you want to go hang out in the park.
Yeah.
You know, go hang out in the park and walk some dogs, some cool dogs that are not necessarily in need of any behavioral, just out for a stroll and wanting to sniff some stuff and pee on some bushes, and you know, that's not a bad gig, man. You know.
Yeah. Once you know what you want, it's important to have inspiration and education. And like, so knowing how to train a dog is obviously important. Knowing how to do what it is you want to do is important. But I also, like, the thing that I have found through the IACP, even more valuable than the education, right? Like, the main reason I go to conference is for inspiration, not education. I go to workshops and I hustle for education. But for inspiration, I want to go out there and I want to see and feel the energy that these individuals have and carry, because I believe that is, again, in alignment with the whole authenticity thing, right? If I see how someone is with their dogs, or like how they talk in real life, like Larry Crone is a great example. Man, that was inspiring to me, to see a man that has reached that level of success yet stays humble, right? So now I have a working model of the positive one that I want to get to, so I can have inspiration and climb that. And now I just know, like, okay, like, it's easy to know what to learn, but I also have to know who I want to be. So that's like critical, is that inspiration aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then once you have inspiration, I think that comes through others, like whether it be a dog that you see that you're inspired to be like, I never knew a dog could be so responsive to like obedience, or like so well socialized. Wow, I'm inspired. Now I'm going to go get educated to learn how to make that happen. Great. Awesome. When you need to get educated, that's where you either go to the people that inspired you, or the people that have the skills that you need to like be able to do the thing that you want. So, like, unfortunately, I've gone a very challenging path in my dog training career, which is the solo path, right? Like, I am George the dog trainer, and aside from Petco, I've never had any formal mentorships. I've had like shadow programs and workshops that I've attended. I put a lot of money and time into my education and travel all over the United States for conferences, whatever, right? But I've never had a mentor that I'm working under, and that's incredibly difficult. I don't recommend you do that at all. It's terrible.
Why? What do you think is the challenge?
You're forced to take shortcuts, right? Like, you can't do the best by the dogs. And so, like, unfortunately, like, there are dogs where it's like, I could have done a better job training them if I wasn't so pressed to have to develop my business, or to like put food on my table, or whatever it is. So part of why I work so hard is to be able to be free enough to do the best job with the dogs that I can. And of course, that's subjective. Yeah.
Yeah, good point, man. If you want to do what's best by the dogs, then definitely get a mentor, because what happens, and that's one of the reasons why I've had George Cockrell, I've had Linda Kame on, and all these old school people, and even Larry Crone, and is that so people can learn where these people are, who they are.
Yeah.
And these people have been in this industry longer than I've been alive, almost twice as long as you've been alive, Mr. Kittridge.
Yeah.
Young man.
I'll be allowed to try soon too.
Well, and it's important, because just like when I've discussed with these people on the live stream, is like, there is certain ground, like these dogs and the relationship with the human being has been around for quite a while, and quite a while before us.
Yeah.
We're not coming in and stepping into something that's brand new here.
No.
And there is ground that has been covered, and there is aspects of the training that is decided, in my opinion. Like, this stuff works. Like, there's certain aspects, and it's important to look at the dog and let the dog show us. But also, when we have dogs that are performing exceptionally well, that we trace that lineage up to that human, and also trace that lineage of that human up to where they learn their mentor as well. And that's exactly what I do, and why I go to these conferences. The IACP, I put down in the crawler, stands for International Association of Canine Professionals. It's definitely a great organization to belong to, and the conferences that they hold every single year are a wonderful opportunity to network, to get inspired, and also to find those people that you can tap in for that education, take your learning further.
Yeah, it's the primary resource that allowed me to create my own business. It is the primary resource that has educated me on the majority of my dog training knowledge. And it is the only reason that I am still currently a dog trainer and an entrepreneur. So while it does have, like any group does, it has its like struggles, and maybe even it's just the struggle of housing 500 people at conference, or like getting all the speakers lined up. They do a phenomenal job, and I'm so glad that I don't have to make it, because it's a massive undertaking what they do. I can't even believe it.
Well, it's just gotten bigger and bigger, and it's great to see it grow in the last decade. Personally, for myself, and I think it's an excellent resource. And at the end of the day, we're all here to benefit the dogs,
Yeah.
um, and you meet people that are authentic, and you form relationships with people that are going through the same struggles that you face, and it's actually reassuring, and sometimes it charges your battery to know that you're not alone, and
Absolutely.
take it a step further and reach out and be able to touch people's hands, give them a hug, little smack on the ass sometimes.
Whatever it is that rubs their engine.
ICP gets a little bit nuts sometimes, but
Yeah,
that's
and
a good thing too, I think,
Yeah, and so I think it's also nice to be like able to let your hair down almost. Like I will censor parts of the story. So I go to the park in the mornings, and I'm real big on evolutionary like biology and human optimization. So I try to get sunlight exposure in the early morning, right? And so I go to the park and I roll up my jeans and I'm there in my boots, and then I take my shirt off and I just bask in the sunshine while I throw the ball for my dog. Well, this morning, one of my dog training students happened to be at that park, and like we engaged in a conversation. And I recognized partway through that I'm standing there shirtless having a conversation with a dog training student, and like I'm in the morning, I haven't had my coffee yet. So I messaged her later in the day and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry if I was at all unprofessional or blah, 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 just being a proper business owner and whatever. And she's like, no, George, you can't be on all the time. And because I expressed that and was vulnerable with her, my relationship with this client is now better.
Are you sure it's not because she saw you without your shirt on?
Listen, I leverage the assets I have at my disposal.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, me being vulnerable is what did it. No, dude, you take it off.
I'm super vulnerable. The sunlight was damaging my skin. You get any more vulnerable than that.
So if you're struggling with your dog with the dog, do you say it's out of your wheelhouse to send to someone who's more experienced, or wing it?
Oh man, this is going to be a rough answer, and it sucks, but I've done that several times, and a couple of the times the mentors or people that I brought the dog to failed me tremendously, and dogs died. So at this point in time, I'm maybe not doing the best thing, but I say yes and I figure it out. And I've been lucky to have access through the IACP and Facebook, and like the best time to ever be alive because I can use the internet, find solutions for my students. And I believe that is actually my job.
Yes. Yura says, hello, West Coast. Hello, East Coast.
Hello, Joris. Joris.
Yeah. Joris. My poor girl down here hacking away, man.
Something I wanted to get into was the future of the industry, right? Because we do live in freaking like the weirdest timeline ever, where we have drones that'll literally drop packages off to your business and stuff like that, right? So people are worried about their jobs. I think the pet industry is one of the few industries that is almost automation proof. I don't think a robot could train a dog as well as a human, depending on what you want, right? Like a robot could get better behaviors and precision timing and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But like to actually, it's going to sound woo-woo, but to maintain a healthy spirit in the dog and not flatten it, I believe the dog needs that human element. So the industry of dog training is, I believe, somewhat stable. And then I think also there's a lot of opportunity for growth. I'm working to become what I would refer a dog park ranger, where basically I do socialization events as well as training that eventually scales to a degree where I am city funded or sponsored, like seal of approval.
Okay.
Go into public dog parks and have authority to socialize the dogs, regulate the dogs. And of course, how I do that is going to be based on my education now that I am inspired. See how it comes back around? But I think it's a really good time to be in this industry, and like there's boundless opportunity, to serve dogs and humans. At least where I am. Like I don't think we're gonna run out of dogs.
Do you, I mean, when you think that you're going to be, or what does it mean to be successful to you?
Oh man, you know what? Like that means I can do what I want when I want with who I want. And that's an answer that I stole from a mentor of mine, but it's about freedom, you know? I think it's about the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like I now make enough money where I can eat and have a house on a regular basis. And like coming from not having that, I can say like that's a huge first step. A plus. Great. That is so convenient. That is so nice to have. Whew. Then you have, you know, things like social belonging and biological fulfillment and things of that nature, eating well, working out, and like having friends and things of that. I'm just getting to a point where I have the time freedom to pursue my interests and things that make me happy. I LARP. I actually have a black eye from
You
LARPing.
LARP, you
Took a
freaking
spear thrust to the eye socket.
he LARPs.
Yeah. I
Tell
freaking
us
love
about LARPing. Hold on. Linda
Oh.
says the pet industry has always been recession proof. During the last recession, it was one of the only industries besides medicine and senior care that actually grew exponentially. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, people find out what's really important to them when they don't have any money and they got their dog in their house. They're going to be like, man, what's up, dog? let's talk. I want to get to know you more because I really can't afford to do anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know?
And again, state of the industry. There's a lot of gross training out there. There's a lot of bad training out there. There's a lot of abuse. You can't focus on that. The only thing you can do is be a better example and do it so well that yours is obviously the superior approach and more available and accessible. And then you proliferate that. The more that you engage and give credence to anything that is gross or unhealthy or abusive, the stronger it becomes.
Absolutely. If you read the book 48 Laws of Power,
yeah,
that's one of the things that it mentions in there. And same thing with the Art of War. Sun Tzu is about, you know, don't mention your enemy, you know, don't give them credence, don't give any, you know, I don't, that's why I don't really bad mouth too many dog trainers, because I don't want people looking them up and
exactly.
I keep their names out of my mouth. I know that there's plenty of them out there, but you won't hear me, you know, going through them. Let's see here. I think more people will become unemployed due to AI, and as a result, daycares and dog walkers would be in less demand. I mean, but then you have the universal UBI of universal basic income that they're talking about to
supplement that.
To supplement the large unemployment. And the thing is, man, is that it takes it a little bit further, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but then there's also this utopia that was built with these rats and this experiment, and where these rats were given everything that they needed, and they didn't have to work for anything. And I mean, it was very interesting. They saw a lot of violent behavior in some of the males that really didn't have a purpose. And it's like, you need to be purpose driven in this life. You need to have a purpose. Otherwise you are not going to know what to do with yourself. A lot of times this inability to recognize what to do with yourself manifests itself in violent behavior and frustration, and especially in men. Linda Kame says, I never acknowledge my enemies, and for 4 decades I have amassed a few. I bet you have. But do you know what? That's bad on them, because I wouldn't want to be your enemy, Linda.
Yeah. Whatever, Linda. I'm only 4 years in, and I have like 10 enemies. So those are rookie numbers. You gotta pump those numbers.
Oh yeah, don't. Linda's gonna pump you into the wall.
No, I'm very soft and fragile and vulnerable. So like, please, Linda, I'm so vulnerable.
Here's my girl. She's not feeling too good, so I'm loving her up.
Hey man, you're one of the few trainers that I know that has cattle dogs. What a life! What a life that is.
Yeah, they're not really good demo dogs. I mean, these herding breeds, they want to control things, right? Yeah. And so once you get a dog in, and they decide, you know, they figure this dog out, and then that dog goes home, and another dog comes in, they're like, damn it, here we go again, you know. And so it's I mean, it's definitely a double-edged sword. But I love these dogs. They're such characters, man, and they're just, My little Wolverines, you know.
Yeah.
I eat my enemies for breakfast. That's what Linda says. I believe it.
Just
Yeah,
like cattle dogs.
little snacks. You know,
Yeah.
she eats her enemies
Yeah.
like little snacks.
So back to the success thing.
Yeah. What does success mean to you?
So we go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The highest point on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. Like just being who you are, just becoming the thing you want to be. Literally looking at something and being like, that's cool. I want to be that. And then becoming that. So literally like.
Or finding aspects of you that match that you seek, you know, and because you're not going to become, I mean, that aspect or that expression of that because that's somebody else's expression of it. You're going to take that.
Living in alignment with the things that you admire in others and like doing what you can to display that in your own interpretation of yourself. Yeah, self-actualizing. Just I think a lot of people are like, "Who am I?" And I'm like, "Man, you get to decide that. Like you get to choose."
Well, I mean, and that's what, that's one of my favorite quotes ever is by the Oracle of Delphi, and she talks about knowing thyself, and the quote is, "Heed these words, you who wish to probe the depths of nature." And guess what we're doing when we are working with animals? Probing the depths of nature, because we're trying to find out how to influence their behavior to coexist with us in a more conducive manner. Heed these words, you who wish to probe the depths of nature. If you do not find within yourself that which you seek, neither will you find it outside. If you ignore the wonders of your own house, how do you expect to find other wonders? In you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods.
Yeah. Yeah.
So self-actualization, that's that hierarchy of Maslow. But I mean, I think it's even further than that, like really knowing yourself and doing that shadow work. And and I think that's where sometimes these dogs get in the way, and that's what Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about, and how they become emotional dumping grounds when this emotion shouldn't be dumped. This emotion should be worked on. And remember what you were saying about the key to your potential lies in these challenges. Like these things need to be kind of chewed through and processed and digested, and then we see what the outcome is and how it benefits our life and what's left over. And know thyself so that you shall be known. Yeah. And that's it too. Like people try to, you know, focus that efforts on the outside and gaining followers and stuff, but if you are authentic and if you're really who you are and walking the path, you know, you will attract genuine, authentic people as well. And that's it. You know, just like if you're trying to be a cheesy salesman, trying to get people to you know, focus on the money, you're going to attract cheesy salesmen who want to focus on the money instead of authentic people who want to build a relationship, a meaningful relationship and fulfilling relationship. What / who you are and feel becomes how you train.
I think if you have, like, let's say someone's complaining and they're like, oh man, I get nothing but negative clients that don't follow through.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of be like, hey, I'll like kind of look at what they're doing. And sometimes they're very negative and they don't follow through. And I'm like, you got whatever you're complaining about, usually in some capacity is a reflection of who you are or what you're doing. The things that we see in others that we dislike are usually the things about ourselves that we like the least.
Yeah. Well, Cameron Thompson, and that's what Adrian was talking about, it says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Yep, Cameron Thompson, she just put up here. Yep, Cameron's the shit. We love Cameron. And that's it. That's true, you know. She was talking about having a hose rolled up or leaving your hose out. And if it takes like 5 seconds to do, and if you're not going to do that, then you're not going to do other aspects of this maintenance and this life, of this thing called life that are going to require you to take it to the next level, right?
Yeah. And since we have Adrian here, she just got the cutest little Maligator puppy.
Yeah,
it's been really nice to watch it on Facebook. I don't comment and engage much on Facebook just because of my beliefs and the way that I approach exposure. And like, I really try to limit myself because I'm trying to focus mostly on myself. But man, every time I see her dog, I click on it and I'm like, yeah, that's a good dog. And it also makes me very glad to not have a Malinois, and in that I instead got a cattle dog at 7 months old, who, yes, was a very rude brat, but at least it wasn't that. So thanks.
Yeah, that's me too. I leave my hose out. I mean, it's still out there right now. I just watered my chickens. It's like a pain in the butt. Adrian's like, I leave the hose out there all the time. But that's, it's a pain in the butt to drag it.
You got to control your hose.
Yeah. So it's just out there sitting there, and then I'll just go over and toward Duck You Too, George. LOL.
I thought it was a compliment.
Duck You Too. What the redneck Malinois? That's what we call a cattle dog. Redneck Malinois. But lift up your cattle dog. Let's see what you got there.
She's come here. Oh yeah. Oh, you want to come? She's good right here. But she's like 42 pounds. She's a perfect little specimen. I call her Piggy because she oinks.
Dude, that's what I call my dog, Piggy.
Oh, yeah, she's a good gentle Piggy. I'm touching her butt.
That's what I call my dog. Huh, Pig? Come here, Piggy. Oh, she's like resting down the bed. Redneck Malinois. Yeah. So success. So what did you say success was?
Oh, me, the self-actualization and then service of others.
That's right. And if you're gonna, whatever you do it good, man. Do it full arm. So, you said you went to a lot of workshops and a lot of shadows and stuff. Did you ever receive workshop overwhelm? Or, I mean, they try to cram a lot of information in a couple days. They call it drinking from a fire hose. You want to speak on that?
So I think that there's so much information readily available that if you try to consume it all, you will be worse off than if you were to do one thing. So I actually, as far as like dog training skill, have fluctuated. I've gone up and down. When I was at Petco, I was a very, very skillful trainer because I was only doing one thing, but I was really super good at that one thing. When I joined the IACP, I attended something like 8 workshops in 2 years, maybe 2.5, right? So like every 3 months, but that was way too much because I was going to different people's workshops. I did Mark McCabe, Nelson Hodges, and Chad Mackin, and a few others, actually all those up there. But then I kind of started not being as good at dog training, like the actual skill of dog training, because I didn't have mastery of any of these parts. And so I was just a novice at so many things. And then I kind of cut some of those away, focused on some other things, and got better because I was doing fewer things. So I think with workshops, the key is to like go to one and see if you like it. And then if you do, give it a good, honest go, like commit to it.
Yeah.
People say, go to a bunch of workshops and take 1 or 2 things from each. And I'm like, that's kind of stupid. I'd rather go to one workshop and take 10 things from it, personally, just time and money and travel expenses wise. And so I did that with the most recent final workshop I went to. I went to Heather Beck's up in Utah, and it was the 3Ds dealing with difficult dogs, blah, blah, blah. Really inspiring, a lot of inspiration through socialization. And I've just been doing what she does. Like I've taken 5 or 10 things from her, and I've just done those. I've just implemented it. So now at my socialization events, like I'd say 60% of my dogs are on transitional slip leashes because that's so effective. And I took a few other things from her as well, but like I haven't done anything since then because I've been practicing that. I've been taking that and refining it and like really sculpting it into my craft. And like if I added something else in now, it would just fuck it up. It would just make me like falter. I don't know. I want to get good at carrying one weight before I add in another.
That's right. I mean, Adrian says that's what Duke Ferguson said to me that hit hard at the conference. Go deep Go deep in one thing.
We're not going to make the available jokes, but they are there.
They are. We're not going to go there. But yeah. And the one thing. But don't go deep in the other thing.
Yeah, only one. Okay. So
But
like,
yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry, we don't mean to.
that's my take on workshops, you know, like, wow. But
Yeah.
like, it has to be treated with respect. People want things so quickly these days. And like, that's coming from the guy that has only been doing this for 5 years, right? Like, there's people
You're starting to have the
longer
realization.
they've been alive.
I mean, that's it, man. I think that's what happens is that you join into this industry and you're hungry and you're like, oh wow, there's so much great thing. There's so many great successful people. I need to glean something off of everyone instead of realizing that you stop and you listen to your heart first and listen to what you want to do with these dogs, you know, and you want to do rehab work, you want to do obedience work, you want to do socialization, you know, and that's the other aspect of this is know that there's a pretty wide world and pretty unlimited potential of what's possible out there, you know, and then that's where you start. And so a lot of people get into rescue and they want to rehab dogs.
Mhm.
And then they say, okay, so I want to start with my own dogs, and then I want to use my dogs to help me rehab dogs. And so that's an aspect of socialization, right? And so then they start implementing new socialization stuff, and then they start, you know, getting down the obedience, and then and then they go to a body language, and then they, you know, and then it just starts getting layered on top of layer and layer and layer and layer, and then pretty soon you have so much energetic residue on your brain that needs to process all this stuff that you basically become. You try to be everything to everyone, and you end up being nothing to no one, right? And that's it. Is that you cannot master anything until you learn to master one thing, and that's it. Is to slow it down, get that. You don't want it to be a mile wide and 2 inches deep. You want it to be a mile or an inch deep and a mile or a mile. Gosh dang it!
It's wide, mile deep.
Thank you,
Yeah.
George. An inch wide and a mile deep before you move on to that next one. Like niche it down.
Yeah.
Figure it out. What gives you joy? Are you a competitor? Do you like to do sport work? Do you like the intensity of these dogs? Do you want to rehab dogs? Do you want to get more into the medical aspect of things? And not only that, but not just with the dogs, but like George is saying, like work on yourself too, man.
The first thing you should be master of is yourself. How are you going to master anything if you cannot master yourself?
My husband just said, never go full retard, Robert Downey Jr. Dude, I love what a freaking Tropic Thunder was. Amazing show, dude.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But yeah, that's right. You know, never go full.
But it's okay to use like again, best kind of stupid. Sometimes you can channel it, and a little bit of retard is the right move.
That's right. And sometimes you need your eyes to rain. The Mon movies make my eyes rain.
Simple Bill.
That's right, Simple Bill. And that's, you know.
So I have a thought. Like, I'm worried about where dogs are going to fit into the world as we grow and develop, right? We have all the like I'm not even talking about the tool bands or the breed bands or anything like that. Again, I love dogs, right? Like, cool. I want to keep dogs around in whatever capacity that it is, right? Like, I want to make sure that if we move to Mars, you know, someone's out there going, hey, we should bring dogs, you know, somehow, some way we should make that happen, you know? So as far as the longevity of dogs go, and I only say this, well, I don't know, screw it. My roommate works at SpaceX, so I get like kind of exposed to a lot of like the forefront of what they're thinking about and like the selection process, as much as he's allowed to tell me without compromising what they're doing, of course. But I think the future of dogs is going to be really interesting. Like phenotypically, right? Not the time. My dog. Phenotypically, like the shape and size and breeds and all of that. What's going to happen, and like what breeds are prevalent in popular culture, and what really develops, and how they're getting
itty bitty.
Yeah, and like
easier to transport, easier to
go. But I like big dogs. I kind of want to keep big dogs around because you know big dogs have a purpose. But I worry that like it's not just going to be the legislation, right? Like we're moving towards a time where it's like if a dog shows any aggression, like I don't want that dog to get put down because aggression is believed to be unsolvable or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So the future of dogs, I think, is in a precarious position as well. And the way that we're going to be able to do any good is going to be affecting massive social change by educating the youth, right? Like teaching youth to be able to read dog body language and just like getting a standard of canine education accessible and available. And so like maybe not the best thing to say, but like my goal is to put the dog training industry out of business. I want dog training to become just a part of the normal culture of owning a dog, not some exceptional thing that people pay exorbitant amounts of money for, but like is readily available and accessible and considered like the norm.
Yeah. I mean, there's a void in the industry that people are seeking now to take advantage of that. But if it wasn't the case, then I mean, there would be an expectation of these dogs and how they're supposed to behave in society, right?
And so in alignment with what we've been talking about, I think the only way we're going to win battles for dogs is by getting good dogs out in public. And so that way more people are seeing those instead of like the dogs that are getting on the news because they're being bad. It's the same thing about like, don't acknowledge your enemies. Well, like we are highlighting the bad dogs and no one's out there going, look at this incredible dog that's saving babies, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that people, just like we lock in on crisis, culture, and all that stuff, we're 10 times more likely to click on something that is going to offend us, right? Then that's it. It's just looking out for these clickbait titles, and that's it's unfortunate. But how does that happen? How does that change come about? That's going to change. The whole world.
And it's cultural, and like I plan to start with dogs, right? But like I'm gonna have to, like, humans and dogs go hand in hand. I'm not gonna be able to help dogs without helping humans, and I'm not gonna be able to help humans without helping dogs. I mean, maybe you could theoretically help humans without helping dogs, but I don't wanna. I wanna do it this way. I've chosen. This is my path.
Well, I mean, it's we're humans, they're dogs, and it's also the interspecies communication, but it's a valuable relationship that, I mean, it's something that I've traded my life to focus on, and you as well, and it's something that, I mean, you might be at the beginning of your career here, but it's not going anywhere, dude, and that's the thing is how we haven't figured it out yet, because there's still a lot of dogs being euthanized every year. There's still a lot of children being bit every year. And those are like, if you were to ask me if when I was going to be a success, it would be in the industry to see those numbers take a dramatic hit. And it looks like we are experiencing a decline in euthanasias. And that makes me happy, but we're also seeing a lot of misconception with the training, and the behavior is not present. I mean, the behavior that we're seeking as a dog owner, and we go hire a professional, or is falling short, in my opinion, as far as the industry as a whole.
Yeah. And again, it's like a dangerous and difficult time to be alive, like in any capacity. Not even. Like in some ways, no, like, I'm not going to go out and push my house across the prairies and die on the Oregon Trail, but it's also more complex. The human brain and body have never been less equipped for the tasks assigned to them on a daily basis.
Interesting. Well, we download how many gigs of data every single day, like 12 to 13 gigs of data in our brain. And that's crazy to me. Media and the Disneyfication of animal ownership drives policy.
Yes. And so policy is an interesting thought. Like, as I get more and more involved in what I'm doing, I'm actually working with my local cities and government offices, because I'm realizing if I want to affect massive social change, there's only a couple ways to do that, right? Yeah. One is icon and the other is legislature, and then education. So you have inspiration, motivation, and education, once again, being the prevalent themes of change. But you can educate the people, like the children, right? Like just make people smarter. You can display a problem and get people motivated to do something about it, or you can be the idol and the thing that they look to and the demonstration of the thing that they want to become. And then last but not least, you can change like the legal things around it, or you can make some very powerful people a lot of money somehow through doing it, and that will also work. But that one's just not really viable for a pet services industry.
Yeah, I mean, here, let's see what.
Because it's such an individualistic.
Well, and Linda says an uptick in importing rescues from other countries, new pathogens, and new methodologies, new influences on an ancient problem.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, I'm going to make a point. I am taking a hyper-local approach to all of my causes. I refuse to travel more than 5 miles outside of a certain point that I have dictated that is my working area. Because if I spend all my time trying to help my town next door before I've fixed up my town, then that sucks. I feel like I should take care of those that I can take care of best, that are closest to me, and make sure they're taken care of before I start going and taking care of people across the world. And I think the same should be done for dogs. I get it. You have a kind soul. Your positive one is that you want to help rescue dogs and that these dogs need to be saved. But to go and help others' dogs before you help the dogs that are kind of already yours seems erroneous to me. And like, dang, that might piss some people off, but like there's so many dogs so local. And like, okay, so maybe this is where it comes from. I was adopted when I was 5 years old, right? Like, so there's a lot of people out there having babies when they could adopt. And it's like, I'm not mad that they're, having babies. That's totally their prerogative. Go to a breeder, do whatever. But like, if I had not been adopted, like, let's say this couple came and saw me and my brother, and then they saw like some babies over in China that maybe needed to be adopted too. And then they chose the babies in China instead of me. I'm like, but I was closer and easier and more convenient and brought less problems and like was an overall more, I would think, beneficial outcome. So again, when we bring in these dogs from overseas, my primary concern, and this is based in evolutionary biology, is totally the exposure of new pathogens and like genetic pools into our already hyper complex and strained system. So maybe just consider it, like I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but like I've trained a few like meat market dogs. I even actually got invited to China to go speak and do an education tour to like kind of combat the Shenyun festival. It's just because I'm tall and white and they thought I would be a good little poster child. I turned it down because I needed to focus on my own business. But I have so many other problems that I have to fix here before I start going and trying to fix other people's problems too.
Yeah. Well, and Adrian says, I'm in a small town. They won't pay me what I'm worth to train or educate. They won't hear even what I have to say because it would seriously change the rural dog ownership paradigm.
Man, and so...
And Linda says, tribalism is what prevents trainers from being successful in amassing the force necessary to drive legislation. I don't know what that
Recent uptick. When I was a wee lass, there were 40,000 hours.
When I was a wee lass before the internet, there were 40,000 hours of broadcast television worldwide. Now there's 1,000 times that. Yeah, it's crazy on the content that's out there.
So I think the concern of tribalism is like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't communicate. I'm not saying that we shouldn't communicate with the others. I think that it's important that we keep lines of communication open, but I think it's more important to focus on the dogs that you can fix, right? Like take what's in front of you and work with it, right? And maybe it won't be perfect and maybe it'll be hard, but like it's there, do something with it.
Yeah. I mean, do what you can with what you have in front of you and what you have access and availability to, Yeah.
Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better.
That's right. Isn't that
probably the canine paradigm?
Yeah, I think of it as like Maya Angelou or something like that.
Yeah, I think she was quoting the canine paradigm.
Do you let me see here, George. What else do you want to chat about, buddy?
Oh man, I want to chat about this all-you-can-eat sushi I'm gonna go eat because
Are you
self-care
hungry?
is important, and I worked hard all week, and I specifically was like, man, I'm not gonna eat lunch because I'm gonna get sushi.
There you go, buddy. Well, I'm going to go out and have dinner or date night with my wife too. So.
Oh, wow! How nice it must be to not be alone.
Almost 16 years been married now.
Yeah,
So.
congratulations, man. That's its own whole hyper complex situation, you know? Trying
Yes,
to
it
integrate
is.
another person into your life. Psh, I
Yeah.
can barely handle me. How do I handle a wife?
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. It's definitely a challenging thing, but it's also very rewarding and 100% worth it. So, how do people get a hold of you, buddy?
George the Dog Trainer, social media, website. If you want to,
GeorgeDogTrainer.com.
yeah, georgethedogtrainer.com, George the Dog Trainer on Instagram, George the Dog Trainer on Facebook. Just happen to be available. Super convenient.
GeorgeTheDogTrainer.com. I'm going to show it on the crawler.
Oh, neat. Yeah, and
I'll
so
put it in the comments here, George.
yeah. So as much as I focus on like the development of my dog training skill, I've also focused a lot on the development of my business and like making sure that I do become a student of my schedule and that I schedule in times for self-care and just, it's
important, man.
it is. And I appreciate all the people that I've been able to learn from and grow through, and because I think the one thing I've learned in my life is gratitude. Like having come from really hard situations, man, just be grateful for what you have. And I think the greatest testament to gratitude is service.
That's right. Serving others.
Yeah.
And then in doing so, you're serving yourself.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
not in some weird esoteric, like, oh, I feel good when I help others way. Like, I think it genuinely makes you a better person.
Yep. Here, let's see. There's what you said. The issue is the deception being perpetrated with our own borders regarding the myths of shelter population. The culture worships at the altar of new and different. U.S. dogs are passe. We need to fix that first. Not import dogs from other countries. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a cultural thing, right? But again, just lead by example, be better, do better.
That's right.
And like, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to share more of my experience or stories. Like, it's a lot of trauma, so I've overcome a lot of different kinds of hurt, and like I've been through a lot of years of therapy and therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists and the whole gambit. And so if anyone's struggling or is like, man, how do I X, Y, or Z, or you just want to, if you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, or rude remarks, I'm open.
Go ahead and ask him. He doesn't bite.
Yeah. There's a cheeky follow-up line to that.
There's a cheeky follow-up line to that. What?
It's the whole unless you ask or I don't bite, hard, whatever. I got lots of them on deck. It's situational, just like with the dogs. Every situation is different. You got to be prepared to drop a fire line.
You know what mine is my little dog is Ash. I'm walking around and people are like, "Oh my god, he's so cute," and I'm like the dog. He'll only make you horny. What the hell?
The Australians call me Horny George, and I've recently been.
Oh yes,
it's not because I'm horny; it's because I make other people horny.
There you
and
go.
Like that's its own kind of terrible, but whatever.
Oh well, we'll say goodbye to everybody, and then hold tight, and then I'll say goodbye to you here in just a second, and we'll chat for a few minutes.
Thanks everyone if you did watch. I have no idea if anyone